Welcome to Sketchbook Legends. I'm your artist, Paul Hostetler. Today we're drawing Tove Jansson's Moomin-adjacent kick-ass hobo buddy, Snufkin. If we want to be specific, I'm drawing 3 small Snufkins on the same page. This is because this was my second attempt. My first one went a little bit disastrously, in my opinion. There's no shame in saying that, but there's a little bit of shame in showing my mistakes on camera. So you're not going to see that. You're going to see the good versions of Snufkin that I did. Now, before we get to Snufkin, you can't explain Snufkin without knowing about the Moomins. The Moomins were invented by Tove Jansson, a native of Finland. Hold on a second, there's a siren outside. I'm just gonna wait till that disappears. I'm doing perfectly legal things. Must be for somebody else. Jansson created the Moomins as sort of like a cartoony side gig while she was attempting to establish herself as a fine arts painter. Finland has, or had at the time, a very robust government-sponsored arts program you could apply for and get very generous grants if the government panels thought your work was worthy of taxpayer money. Tove Jansson was the daughter of an extremely famous and well-bestowed sculptor, but she herself found it really hard to get these sort of government grants, so to pay the bills, she started creating these little cartoon characters and selling them on the side, sort of as just a throwaway thing while she tried to get her real art career going. Most of the Moomin characters were based either on parts of her personality or on different people that she knew, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Snufkin first appeared in her second Moomin book, Comet in Moomin Land, and was quickly established as Moomin Troll's best friend. Moomin Troll is the main character in all of these books. He's got his Moomin family of Moomins. There's the Moomin dad and Moomin mom. Moomin Troll, the younger one, he's got a girlfriend named Snork Maiden. He's got other people come and go. One of those people was Snufkin. Snufkin wears a big floppy hat and a green smock, and most notably he is completely nomadic in nature, which I suppose is a kinder descriptor than just hobo, since a hobo describes a homeless person who both travels and works. And Snufkin, while he travels a lot, avoids labor whenever possible. So instead, he'd be more like a tramp. I looked this up on Wikipedia, and just to fill in the complete picture, a bum is a homeless person who neither travels nor works. So you got tramps, hobos, and bums. Snufkin is a tramp, like Charlie Chaplin's Little Tramp, but I feel more zen. I think part of Snufkin's nomadic nature comes from the fact that the Moomins who live in Moomin Valley experience harsh winters, and then as anyone who's lived through tough winters understands, You really just want to sleep through the entire thing and wake up again when it's spring. This is what the Moomins do. This is what I imagine most Finnish people do, but not Snufkin. Snufkin is not a Moomin troll. He's a little dude, so instead of hibernating, he just leaves every winter and comes back in the spring. He migrates to parts unknown. And then comes back when things are copacetic. Now, Tove Jansson based Snufkin, at least in part, on her friend Atos Virtanen, which I'm probably mispronouncing. Could be Virtanen? Virtanen? Atos, I'll just go with Atos, was a leftist publisher, philosopher, and later a member of parliament. And apparently he also sometimes wore a green hat. Despite, a great friendship and a great affection between the two of them, Atos was an extremely busy person with all of his ventures, and he would duck out of Jansson's life for weeks or months at a time before resurfacing again. I know based on the Finnish movie Tové that at one point they carried on an affair while Atos was married. At another point, they were engaged to be married themselves after Atos got a divorce. But this didn't work out because Jansson was at the very least bisexual and probably entirely lesbian. And also, she was definitely in love with other people, even if the movie portrays Atos as being head over heels for her. Jansson's other lovers also make it into the Moomin world as side characters. But we'll save that for another sketchbook page. You can see here, I've decided a little bit out of the ordinary for me to draw Snufkin using a crow quill pen. I'm using a Leonard Principality nib, which is a little bit tougher to find, but I think they work better than, the leading quills on the market. And you can also see that one of Snufkin's traits is that he plays the harmonica. So he's writing a song or something based on a flower that he saw or a bird he heard. A song will come to him and he'll just write one on the spot, play it on his harmonica, sing it out loud, and then forget about it. A very of-the-moment sort of character. To me, Snufkin exemplifies the best aspects of cynical living. And I don't mean cynical like we use it today, sort of a sarcastic or dismissive, but cynical in the way of the classical Greek school of philosophy. Now, cynicism was invented by the Greek Antisthenes, who was a pupil of Socrates, and cynicism was popularized, at least in the modern day, by his student Diogenes, as a philosophy based on the rejection of typical values like wealth, power, and conformity. Most famously, Diogenes lived in a barrel on the street, refusing to live in a house or conform to society's expectations, and survived by begging. It was also part of the classical cynical philosophy to try and convert others to the school of cynicism, in which he engaged in a sort of street-side form of stand-up comedy, which mostly involved roasting passersby and pointing out how silly and meaningless their lives were. There's a reason there aren't a lot of famous die-hard classical cynics. Part of being a classical cynic also involved an active impudence in the face of laws and mores that keep people from focusing on mental clarity. I feel that Snufkin definitely encapsulates those sort of values. He's a bum, but he's a good bum, a moral bum, and a bit of a rebel. In the book Moomin's Summer Madness, for example, he sneaks into a park and cuts down all the "do not walk on the grass" signs. And then he frees all the children, who in the book are called Woodies, who had been imprisoned by the park warden for playing too hard. And since these kids now see Snufkin as their savior, they refuse to leave him while he takes his annual pilgrimage toward Moomin Valley. And along the way, he ends up carrying a whole bunch of these kids when they get tired of walking, and he breaks into various houses in order to feed them. And this particular story ends when he's able to pass off all the kids on a lonely spinster. You get the sense all through that there's nothing that Snufkin would like. One important thing to note about classical Greek cynicism is that, like all of the classical Greek philosophies, his heart tells him that this is something that he needs to do. So he does as good a job as he can at keeping these kids safe through the book until he's able to find them a good home. Now I'm opting to draw a more realistic version of Snufkin than is usually portrayed. The Moomins are a very cartoony bunch. But, you know, it's a little ironic that the simpler and more cartoony you make a character, the harder they are to draw. With more detail comes more opportunity to correct mistakes with extra marks. It's based on the premise that the highest possible thing that you can do with your life is become a philosopher. And if you are unable to philosophize adequately, your life should be devoted to making it possible for philosophers to do their work unimpeded. These guys had a lot of ideas, but the main undercurrent of all of them is that the thing that they are doing is more important than the thing everybody else is doing, which does not jibe with the Snufkin way of life at all, which is more sort of go with the flow, kind of an Eastern philosophy, honestly. I mean, one of the downsides of cynicism as presented is that detachment from all material goods and conventions also affects a person's relationship. In 1954, Tove Jansson started drawing a daily Moomin comic strip, and in that, Moomin Troll meets Snufkin in the spring by being attracted to his campfire in the woods. And when asked what would have happened if Moomin Troll hadn't seen the campfire, Snufkin replies, "Well, we wouldn't have met." There's a beat, and then Moomin Troll is sad at the thought of not meeting his friend. And Snufkin goes on to say, "Of course I would have built more campfires." Even though Snufkin exemplifies cynicism, he's not beholden to it. He's still out to have a good time and ensure that his friends have a good time also. And if he chides them in any way, it's generally to point out that they're getting overly excited about something kind of silly. But, he'll also just let them run their course while he goes off and sleeps in a hammock or builds a toy boat or something. Now, one thing you never see in the Moomin books or the Moomin comics is Snufkin outside of his normal outfit. He's got his green smock, and you never see it unbuttoned. And you never see him with bare feet. So I'm taking a few liberties here. You do often see Snufkin with a pipe, though, which, in my opinion, is one of those, you can't do that nowadays, sort of old man complaints about children's literature is that there's much less in the way of drinking and smoking in them. I suppose it models better behavior, but there's an amount of charm to just seeing a variety of ways of life. Part of my decision to use a quill pen in drawing these Snufkins was that I'm fairly sure that Tove Jansson also used a quill pen to draw her Moomin illustrations and her bronze, who were like, this character did a thing, therefore I will do a thing, but these are the same kids who ruined spring-loaded toys by shooting themselves in the eyeball with Captain America's missile or whatever. Comic strips, which are all of her drawings are absolutely gorgeous. They use the black and white combination to perfect effect. A lot of the stories are set in pastoral scenes or woodlands or caves, and the way she does hatching is really evocative and really effective. I don't draw that way, and the first time I tried to draw Snufkin, I tried to emulate it, and it ended up looking like a blurry mess. So one thing about using dip tools is that you gotta clean them frequently, or else the marks you're making when they're fresh are not the same kind of marks they make after you've been using the same tool for 20 minutes. That's why for sketchbooks and stuff, I usually just pull out a brush pen or a technical pen or even a ballpoint pen. You get the same marks every time that's what they're made for, is consistency. Maybe a little bit less expressive, but, you know, there's a trade-off with everything. I've also always considered Snufkin to be a little bit of a hippie. He's always got the flowers in his hat, and in general, just in his laid-back attitude. No doubt, the sort of very chill Moomin storytelling devices made certain people who demand everybody be busy, made them upset. But, you know, those are the sort of people that I think we should have learned to just ignore by now. Here I'm drawing a Snufkin waving, doing a little wave goodbye. Maybe you can see that in the paper skeleton, the pencil underdrawing. Snufkin also kind of reminds me of the wandering adventure man style of stories. The first one that comes to mind is Lee Child's Reacher books, Jack Reacher. Just one guy carrying no luggage except a toothbrush in his pocket, going from place to place as the mood strikes him. And, you know, seeing what there is, making friends, making a few enemies, but living a sort of carefree lifestyle with no attachments. Jack Reacher is quite a bit more violent than Snufkin, but then he does wander around America instead of Finland or Moomin Valley, much more tranquil places. There's also other examples of like the wandering adventurer David Banner from the Incredible Hulk TV series, Natasha Lyonne's Charlie Cale in Poker Face. She goes from place to place in her, you know, vintage Barracuda, solving mysteries. And there's also a whole bunch of masterless samurai Ronin stories and movies from Japan, in which the main character simply moves from place to place, never settling, never forming lasting attachments, simply because they had a home and then by law and convention they lost it. And, you know, even if it seems lonely the way I described, there's something kind of very appealing about the fantasy of that lifestyle, just in the freedom, the idea of going wherever you like, doing whatever you want to without needing to think about attachments or packing or making arrangements for the care of plants or animals or loved ones or houses. A lot of material possessions require an awful lot of care. I mean, like, I'm recording this on, like, machinery that gets updated against my will, something like every 6 months. And it'll just stop working if I don't pay attention to it. And you gotta think that without all this stuff that you have to worry about and maintain, would life be more pure? just to strip it down to the essentials of eating and sleeping and taking care of just your body and your mind. But, you know, in real life, it is just a fantasy. Because in real life, doing that sort of nomadic traveling is miserable beyond my capacity for belief. I mean, you only need to look up on YouTube van lifer, and you'll see what the nomadic lifestyle with no attachments actually looks like. It's a lot less of wandering through meadows and composing songs based on the trills of passing birds, and a lot more of trying to find a Walmart parking lot in Nebraska that will let you stay overnight in your camper van. As the cynics pointed out, society is built up of a lot of really unnecessary rules that make being nomadic or having no house a lot harder than it absolutely needs to be. In real life, people with houses do not like the people who don't have houses. They don't like the people who wander, even if they envy them at the same time. It's just nomads are considered disruptive and a bad influence, simply because they pose an alternative to a lifestyle that is held up as not an option, but is really just a choice. If these sort of bedrocks of society are just choices, then, you know, what have these people who have been saving up and maintaining their houses for all these years, what have they really accomplished? People don't feel like they're wrong in their life choices. Really, that's what the cynics are all about, is pointing out how people are wrong in their conventional life choices. And that's why there are very, very, very few real classical cynics around these days. But that's why there's also so many of these wandering, cynical style fictional heroes like Snufkin, taking it easy for all us sinners. Now, you can see as I've been drawing 3 Snufkins that each one has been getting a little bit looser in the rendering. Pen lines are getting a little bit more scratchy, and I've been doing a little bit more rendering in terms of shadows and lighting, making things just a little more impressionistic. And that is partly because I'm out of practice with these tools. It takes a while to get in the groove. And it's partially because it takes a couple of sketches in order to loosen up. That's what sketchbooks are for, is really to get your brain in the mode of drawing the way you want to, in order that you can make a final work once you're locked into your style. It's a shame that I don't draw like this all the time, but a lot of the drawing that I do is in comics, which have specific proportions. You need to fit an action within a panel and then a subsequent action in the panel next to it. It can't be quite as loose. Well, I can't be quite as loose as I would absolutely like to be, because my marks would tend to go outside of the panel and ruin the composition. But you never know. If I do enough of these sketchbook things, it's entirely possible that I'll get the hang of loose, sketchy style drawings, and I'll be able to translate that accurately into comics. But it's also just as likely that I'll take anything I've learned from these pen marks and try my best to translate that into a brush, which is my preferred medium. It's good to try different things once in a while, get out of the comfort zone. Just in case I need to pull out a quill pen for a specific technique, to convey a specific atmosphere. It's good to have the practice under my belt so that I can do that. You can see, I noticed it after I had already inked it in, but the perspective on his left arm there is a little bit wonky. I should have just whited out the entirety of that. It could stand on its own with just without the elbow sticking out to the side. If you try and model that in real life, it gets kind of awkward. And that's Snufkin. Press the like and subscribe buttons if you feel like it, and don't press either one if you don't feel like it. That's no horse off my back either way. And I'm aware that I'm mixing metaphors, but I'm also aware that it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. You can find me around the internet, on Blue Sky, on Ko-Fi if you want to drop me $1 or $2, and on Patreon if you'd like to see these videos and other sketches and other comics before the rest of the internet gets to. That's where I put them. You can find me on all those platforms at phostetlerart. You can also visit my website at phostetler.com, which I update much less frequently, but maybe that's what you'd like, as a view at the permanent collection. And don't forget, stay sketching, stay legendary, and see you next time.